So on behalf of USJETA, I'd like to welcome all of you to this webinar. My name is Jessica Livingston. I'm the Executive Director of USJETA. I was a Hokkaido ALT from 2003 to 2006, and I know we have a few people on here that are not JETs or JET alumni. So for those of you that are unfamiliar, USJETA is the US JET Program Alumni Association. So we're a nonprofit and we're dedicated to serving the JET community here in the United States. And all of us that are or were JETs, we have all taught English in the Japanese school system, or we served as coordinators for international relations in municipal offices across Japan. And there's like over 45,000 of us now in the United States. But like many of you, my relationship with Japan has spanned many years, and my Japanese language skills came from a variety of places, but it most definitely included Japanese teachers, both in high school and university. I think without them, my confidence in my Japanese would definitely not have been as strong, and my interactions while I was on the JET program would definitely have been much more stilted. So all of those teachers helped shape my life and also my career. And so tonight I'm really excited to partner with AATJ, which is the American Association of Teachers of Japanese, and Middlebury Language Schools to host this webinar that's all about illuminating the pathway to becoming a Japanese language teacher and also explaining to you why we need them. So we have a really excellent panel of presenters this evening. Before I introduce them, I do quickly want to thank the US Japan Foundation for supporting tonight's talk. I think they're one of many foundations or organizations that see value in our community as a whole, in the JET alumni community as a whole, and they really do want to support us to fill roles that help bring the US and Japan closer. And I also want to thank my colleague Julia, who is always in the background, but she does so much behind the scenes to make this and all of our programming possible. So thank you, Julia. This webinar is going to consist of basically three parts. First, we will have Thor and Sawin, Dr. Sawin and Tabuse Sensei from Middlebury Language Schools, and they're going to give brief presentations on why Japanese language teachers are needed and kind of the options of pathways to become one. And then Kate Davis, who is the vice chair of AATJ and a Japanese language educator herself, she will be moderating a discussion amongst our JET alumni panel, who are all Japanese language educators at the K-12 or higher ed levels. And then lastly, we're going to have breakout sessions where you all will have the opportunity to speak in smaller groups with all of our presenters. So you're welcome to put questions in the chat, and if someone can answer them along the way, they will. But if they don't get answered in the chat, please bring your questions to the breakout sessions that will, happen after the formal panel discussion and presentation. So I think that basically outlines what we're doing and where we're going. So I am going to hand it over to Kate to introduce herself.
Good evening. 皆さんこんばんは。はじめまして。My name is Catherine Davis, but I go by Kate. I'll be moderating our panel discussion this evening, and welcome everyone to our session, Pathways to Becoming a Japanese Language Educator. We are thrilled to have you all with us. Full disclosure, I was not a JET. However, I did work as an ALT through a similar program between sister cities, so I am very familiar with the work that you are doing or that you have done, and I am honored to have been invited to help with this session. I'm currently teaching Japanese at Washtenaw Community College, which is near both the University of Michigan and Eastern Michigan University, so many of our students choose to transfer to either of those schools. And I'm entering my second year as one of the vice presidents of the American Association of Teachers of Japanese. And I'm also acting as the president of the Japanese Teachers Association of Michigan. So I've got a lot of networking experience if you're curious about some of our associations. I have experience in private, public, and charter schools, and I've taught students as young as fourth graders up to a current 65-year-old gentleman in one of my Japanese classes at Washtenaw. I also have experience starting a brand new program from scratch at a high school in Detroit. And I am very passionate about mentoring new teachers, and I'm very excited that you're all thinking of joining our ranks. My job as moderator tonight is to help facilitate the panel discussion, which basically means keeping us all within our time constraints. So please know, as Jessica said, that you will have a chance to speak to our panelists and our presenters. So make note of any questions that you have. You will have the chance to ask them if they don't get addressed in the chat. So now I'd like to turn to our presenters and panelists and give them a chance to introduce themselves. So everyone, if you could tell your name, your title or position that you are currently in, and if you were a JET, what your time and placement were. And I'm going to toss it to Helena first.
So hello, welcome, konbanwa, minasan. I was born and raised in Boulder, Colorado, and that is where I'm sitting right now. I was a JET in Kawaguchi in Saitama Ken from 1994 to 97. I only meant to be there for 1 year. I liked it so much, I stayed. I liked it so much, I stayed. And I think like many of us, it was a taste of what teaching could be, and it made me realize this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. Some of my friends said, oh, heck no, this is not it. But I think a lot of us said, oh my gosh, how can I do more of this? So after being in Saitama for 3 years, teaching in middle schools, I came back to America, got my teaching license here, married my then boyfriend, now Japanese husband of 26 years, and lived in his hometown of Saku in Nagano-ken, and taught in 3 elementary schools back when that was a pilot program. Maybe more of you are in elementary schools now. And then when we came back to America in 2001, I started teaching at my old high school, Boulder High, and German and Japanese. So it's been a wonderful journey, and I look forward to answering any questions you have tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. On to Joyce.
Thank you so much. I was told my mic is a bit muted, so I will try my best to speak up. Konbanwa, minasan. I am Joyce Arellano-Bravo. I teach Japanese, both Japanese and Spanish, in Sacramento, at a high school in Sacramento. I think Shirai sensei, her story, although mine is not as wonderful, mirrors her story very much. I went on the JET program. Loved it so much. I did the maximum amount of years, wanted to stay. Then I had to go to the private school route. Again, my intention was also to stay 1 year, become fluent in Japanese, and come back. I ended up staying for 11 years. I'm still working on the fluent part. It really has been an awesome journey because I am doing what my passion is. And I think probably if a lot of you are considering, those of you who are JETs, I was a JET, in Chiba from 2003 until 2006. And that's probably where you have found your love for Japan, Japanese culture, and Japanese language. And making that your job really doesn't feel like a job. It's your dream. You have fun every day. And so I'm so glad that you're here, and I look forward to sharing my journey and some tips with you. Thank you.
And our final panelist, Anne.
Konbanwa, minasan. My name is Anne Hooghart, and I've probably been at this a little longer than the rest of you. I went to Japan as an exchange student in high school, so this is 40 some years ago, and I just wanted to get back to Japan, so that's why I did the JET program. People said, oh, you should be a teacher. I said, no, who wants to be a teacher? No, I'll be in business or whatever. And then it's like the other panelists said, I kind of fell in love with teaching while I was in Japan, and still resisted a little bit, but ended up teaching. And it is, like you say, it's a passion, it's a vocation. I feel like it's my ikigai. So I've been teaching at high school. I've taught little kids. I've taught elementary. I've taught, you name it. And I also had a, senior citizen in one of my Western Michigan University classes. He was one of my best students. So right now I'm at Mott Community College in Flint, Michigan, and Washtenaw Community College in Ann Arbor with Kate Sensei. And so having a lot of fun with it. And I've also been a teacher educator at Michigan State University. So I do love mentoring and helping people to figure out if this is the career for them. So yoroshiku onegai itashimasu.
Yoroshiku onegai. And then our 2 presenters. So Dr. Sawin, I'll ask you to introduce yourself first.
Hello, my name is Thor Sawin. I'm one of the only people here I'm the only person probably who doesn't speak Japanese. I'm actually a German language educator, but I've been training language teachers for a long time. I taught German overseas in many different countries, and I've started a program that licenses language teachers and that trains teachers for the public schools, as well as been working for many years on training language teachers for a wide variety of adult education settings. So I'm here to speak about some of the options for becoming language teachers and the need for it in our society. It's great to meet you all.
Thank you. And on to Tabuse Sensei. And when you finish, you can move into your presentation. よろしくお願いします。
皆さん、こんばんは。大丈夫ですか？聞こえますか？ I am Motoko Tabuse, Director of School of Japanese at Middlebury Language Schools. In the past, I served as the Chief Reader of AP Japanese Language and Culture Exam, AATJ President, the College Board World Language Consultant, among others. I recently retired from Eastern Michigan University, and now I'm the Emeritus Professor at EMU. Now, I will be spending about 8 to 10 minutes talking about general and then talking about Middlebury and other AATJ Japan Foundation information for you. Okay, so I am going to be sharing a screen, and I hope you are able to see this slide.
Yep, it looks great, Tabuse Sensei.
Okay, great. So the agenda for my presentation is I'm going to cover a lot of things, so I may talk pretty fast. My intention is to give you general information and Middlebury specific information about pathways to becoming a Japanese language educator. Anyway, so why do we need Japanese language culture teachers now? As seen in this pie graph and bar graphs, there is a shortage of Japanese language teachers. A large number of veteran teachers have begun retiring, and we are in dire need of new teachers. Some states, such as Illinois, just passed a state regulation where they require K-12 students to learn a world language for 2 years. So demand is here. Now, this map is of Japanese language learners in the USA. There are more Japanese language learners in the bluish color states and less in the yellowish color states. The number of Japanese learners seem to be correlated with the locations of Japanese American companies throughout the United States. Many of you are familiar with, or at least heard of Japanese Language Proficiency Test, JLPT. This past Sunday was the test day in the United States, and I proctored the N1 test at University of Michigan. The previous slide, Japanese language learners map, was published in 2021 by the Japan Foundation, but as you can see, the trend has not changed significantly. All right, so more about trends. Objectives of Japanese language learning in the North America data. The data from 2021 and 2018 were published by the Japan Foundation. As you can see, many learners of Japanese, they learn Japanese because they're interested in anime, manga, J-pop, fashion, food, etc. So the three biggest reasons are Japanese language and culture, history, leisure arts, and then, of course, the first is anime and manga and whatnot. Here you go. This is the Japan Foundation Language Center website. This wonderful site lists useful information about becoming a Japanese teacher. For example, the website lists types of places that teach Japanese language in the United States. As you can see, in addition to K through public and private schools and public and private colleges and universities, community colleges, you can teach language at Saturday schools, nonprofit organizations such as Japan America Society, for-profit organizations, and online schools. Continuing with the Japan Foundation site, it lists the U.S. colleges and universities where you can obtain teaching credentials. All K-12 public school teachers must be certified in the state in which they teach, and the requirements vary greatly by the state. Private K through 12 schools may not require teacher certification, yet they often require a master's or higher degree or a state-issued certificate. The universities and colleges listed in this website usually offer the initial certification programs, and therefore it's usually for undergraduate students. JET participants, if you are JET participants, you already have a BA or equivalent. So JET participants should consider master's degree programs or alternative pathways. Thor will be explaining about alternative routes to obtain certification to become a teacher. Now, so to be a teacher, you need to demonstrate Japanese language proficiency at the advanced level or at least intermediate high level in all skills using ACTFL, meaning American Council on the Teaching of Foreign Languages, proficiency scales. Advanced level people are comfortable with parallel level length Japanese. They can present and discuss abstract topics and write academic reports and papers in Japanese with relative accuracy. Here's a note about Japanese JLPT, test N1 and N2. JLPT does not assess speaking and writing. So the key idea for this context of being a language teacher is that you will need to demonstrate all 4 skills of reading, writing, listening, speaking at advanced level. Now let me talk about the Middlebury's program as an example. Middlebury offers a non-degree 8-week immersion program, language schools, I should say. Middlebury Language Schools offers a non-degree 8-week immersion program and graduate degree programs. If you want to focus on developing your Japanese language skills, then the immersion program will be suitable for you. And we have high school students to mature people. We have 2 master MA programs, MA in Japanese language and culture, focusing on teaching at higher ed and business establishments and whatnot. And MAT is a teacher training program with secondary teaching license. Now, I will focus on the MA program information. If you have any questions about the MAT program, please go to Thor's breakout room. MA Japanese consists of 12 courses, and 11 out of 12 courses are conducted in Japanese. So this is the course schedule at a glance. This is a MA and MAT course schedule at a glance. The program begins in the summer in person at Middlebury, Vermont. You take 3 courses in the first summer and take 2 7-week asynchronous online courses in fall 1 and take 2 7-week online courses in spring. And then you return to Middlebury and take 3 courses in summer 2 and take last asynchronous courses in fall. And these are the course faculty members. I'm not quite sure if you can see this, the universities. What makes Middlebury's graduate program different from others is that we have professors from different institutions, from California to Washington, D.C. But we're all passionate, like the panelists, about teaching, educating future Japanese language educators and leaders in Japanese fields in the United States. And this is the fall and spring asynchronous online course faculty. This is where MAT, the fall and spring online courses is where MA and MAT programs differ. The MA program courses are taught in Japanese, but MAT program courses are taught in English with a candidate with other languages. The courses are asynchronous because we understand that students have to work during the academic year. And most of our graduate students, after they finish their courses, teach at high schools, Saturday schools, community colleges, 4-year colleges, and business offices. And we have one who is working at the Consul General in Japan in Detroit. Now, let me talk about AATJ. I presented information about Middlebury's graduate programs. However, you should also please visit AATJ's websites. First, the Special Interest Group, that is the Japanese Language Education Graduate Program Network. This site will give you more information about other graduate programs in the United States. The SIG chair is Jay Takeuchi Sensei, and she is a JET alum and president-elect of the AATJ. You must be very proud, yay. And also we have AATJ job line to find what kind of positions are open related to Japanese language educators. The information is updated very frequently. And if you want to explore what a Japanese teacher's life is like in your area, AATJ's local affiliate will be a good place. Local organizations are generally a very great place for you to interact with Japanese language educators in the area and see them in action. Now, and of course, the Japan Foundation Los Angeles site is full of useful information. And that ends my very quick introduction of general and Middlebury specific and AATJ and Japan Foundation's information. Thank you.
Thank you, Tabuse Sensei. You are right on time. So I will toss it over to Dr. Sawin Sensei to start his part of the presentation. You are there.
Okay, let me share my screen as well. So I'm here to talk about ways to become particularly a teacher in the K-12 ecosystem in the United States. If you aren't familiar with how the K-12 teacher preparation world works, basically you can choose to either teach in a public school, which is going to require a license of you. And when you teach in a public school, there's actually two kinds of ways to enter a public school. There's what's called alternate pathways, and these really differ by state. Some states have many different alternate pathways. Some states just have one alternate pathway. I'll talk a little bit more about those in a second. Or you can enter a public school, get a teaching license through what's called an EPP, an Educator Preparation Program. So these are official programs that are recognized by the state as being more thorough, more consistent, sort of more experienced. They're evaluated more closely by the states. And because of that, they're trusted a little bit more. So those are the ways to public school. To teach in a private school or a charter school, sometimes you need a teaching license. Many private schools will hire you without one. And there's pros and cons to teaching in a private school versus a public school. So private schools sometimes have smaller class sizes. Sometimes there's more resources per student, but often the pay is a lot lower in a private school than in a public school. Private schools are more likely to offer housing if it's a residential private school that you can live in the dormitories, which is sometimes a bonus. But yeah, private school experience, it's difficult to take that experience and become a public school teacher later. Whereas if you start out in a public school, it's easy to take that experience and move to a private school. So kind of thinking about the possible trajectories. So an educator preparation program is an official program that's sort of run by a university or some accredited organization through a state. And NASTEC is the council of all of the different teacher education programs among all of the states. And because there's this NASTEC compact that the states have signed with each other, if you're licensed in one state, you can transfer that license to other states. Sometimes it's a complete breeze, like Vermont and Connecticut have a full handshake. There's really nothing you have to do. There are some states that ask you to do something extra. New York wants you to take a suicide prevention class. Arkansas wants you to take an Arkansas history class. There's some different things that they might require of candidates coming from another state, but for the most part, it works pretty easily. And what educator preparation programs have, which sets them apart from others, is that there's a student teaching practicum where you're teaching in a school for a set amount of weeks. Usually it's at least 13 weeks full-time, or over the course of a whole academic year part-time. You're working closely with a mentor teacher and as well as a supervisor from the Educator preparation program. So you get lots of practice being in the classroom with students before you ever start your job. Whereas at a private school, you don't necessarily have that experience. The alternate pathways, if this is an option, especially because there's a huge teacher shortage, which Dr. Tabuse mentioned. And I think in many ways, this is the biggest reason that we should consider becoming language educators. The number one reason that schools end their language programs is because they cannot find a suitable teacher. And I hear all the time about schools where there's student interest, there's parent interest in the language in Japanese, but they end the program because there's no one that they can find. And in fact, schools in both private and public say it's kind of changes from year to year whether language teachers are hardest to find or special education teachers are hardest to find, but it's right up there, the very hardest. It's so difficult to find someone who speaks the language and is trained as a language teacher. And so that's one of the main reasons we're seeing declining enrollment in K-12 language programs is the lack of teachers. And hopefully many of you had the chance to learn Japanese in your K-12 experience. But if you didn't, thinking back in your life, how exciting that would have been to have the chance to take Japanese as an elementary, middle, or high school student and fall in love with that world earlier. It's up to us becoming Japanese language teachers to make that possible for students. So there's different kinds of alternate pathways, and this is because states recognize the shortage. They've kind of created a few shortcuts to become a teacher. You can earn your license while you're teaching. So they'll hire you in the school full time. And then states have a different emergency program where you can start to take classes and you have an emergency license. You're paid usually a little less, but the idea is over the course of 3 or 4 years, you'll turn that into a regular license by taking classes. You can use prior teaching experiences in a portfolio, and JET experience would count as this. So if you've taught at a high school level English in Japan, there are some states, Vermont is one of them, where you can assemble a portfolio of all of the assignments, everything you did as a teacher, and you kind of defend yourself to a board of experts, and they'll decide, I think you're an experienced enough teacher that will give you an initial license based on the experience that you have. Or sometimes you can use prior coursework. If you've taken an education degree before but never finished it, you can submit your coursework, your transcript, and the state might waive a lot of the requirements to get you into the classroom faster. The downside of the alternate pathways is that they're really usable within one state. If you get an emergency or alternate license in the state of Michigan, it's much, much harder for Texas or Florida to accept that emergency license until you've had a long teaching experience and that you've kind of worked your way into becoming a regular teacher. Whereas if you get a degree from an educator preparation program, that is much easier to transfer in and among the different states. I would say if you're thinking about an educator preparation program, some of them are at the bachelor's level. There's some post-bac programs where you don't get a full master's degree, but you take some classes after the bachelor's degree. Or there's some like an MAT, which you heard Dr. Tabuse mention, a master's in teaching, where you're getting a master's degree and the teaching license at the same time. And I think if you already have a bachelor's degree, an MAT is the way to go because the biggest pay bump you get as a teacher is for having a master's degree. So you have the pay for having a bachelor's, pay for post-bac. There's a big jump at master's, and then master's plus 30 and doctorate are not very big. So if you can start your pay scale having a master's degree and a license, the subsequent raises over the course of your career will be higher. You'll get more benefit pay-wise if you start out with a master's degree in your teaching career than if you try to accomplish it later on. So what do you have to do to get a license? This is from Vermont, but it's very typical of all of the states. There's a couple different things that you'll need to do. You need to prove your basic skills. Even if you're a Japanese teacher, every state wants to see proof of your English reading, your English writing, and your ability to do math and English, because you may have to swap and sub in for a math or social studies or an English class. This happens. So there's a certain level. Many states allow you to do this through ACT scores, SAT scores. There's lots of different measures for the basic skills. You need to demonstrate your language proficiency. And there's about 17 states that have their own language proficiency tests. Michigan is one of them. But then there's a general test called the Praxis 2, which is you can get in many different kinds of states. But each state has their own requirements for how they want to show that you actually speak Japanese and you know the subject of Japanese. And as Tabuse Sensei says, intermediate high is the threshold. So that's lower than the threshold for Spanish or for French. I think the assumption is that Japanese is a more challenging language. So many states, you only have to have intermediate high to be a public school teacher licensed, whereas for Spanish or French, the expectation is often a little bit higher. It depends also state by state. Almost every program requires some kind of a portfolio. The EdTPA is a universally or acknowledged one among many states. InTask is a teaching organization, so they create a portfolio. This is what we use in Vermont, that the candidates create artifacts and put in this portfolio, and that's defended. You need 60 hours of observation, so fieldwork, being in schools before you start your student teaching, just being around learning and learners as part of the program. 36 credits of coursework is what Vermont requires. There's some states where it's less, 27 or 30. And then a 13-week student teaching placement in your teaching language. That's if it's full-time. There are states where you can do a full year teaching, but that you do then fewer hours per week. And if you're getting just a secondary license, this would be just in middle and high schools. If you're getting a K-12 license, usually you do some of it in the elementary level, or maybe your field observation hours at the elementary, but then your student teaching itself at the secondary level. It's harder to find Japanese in elementary schools, but there are some immersion elementary schools where Japanese is taught. The teaching license that we offer through Middlebury allows you to teach 7 through 12, middle or high school, in the language you license. But one thing that's true of Japanese teachers is they often need something else. And so just by taking the Spanish test or the French test, or even through, you can add on other endorsements that you can be allowed to teach other things besides Japanese, which is something that I really recommend. Because Japanese programs, you might be the only person in your school or even your school district that is teaching Japanese. And it's important to find a program, I think, that trains language educators. One advantage of the Middlebury program that Tabuse Sensei introduced and that I helped start is that all of the classes are designed for just language teachers. Many of the MAT programs or post-bac, you're together with kindergarten teachers and gym teachers and biology teachers. So the coursework and the assignments are very vague. And the teachers may have never even taken a foreign language, so they don't really understand what that's like. But look for an MAT program. We're not the only ones, or an educator preparation program that's really aimed just for language teachers, because it's such a special place in the classroom ecosystem. And I think that's a great way to get the benefit of it. And we are one of the only ones that has at least half of the teaching in Japanese, let alone in English. So that's something that makes our program unique as well. Okay, thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Dr. Sawin. And now we're going to move into the panel discussion portion. And there was a great question in the chat. Should we put our questions in the chat now? You're welcome to. We can't guarantee that we'll get to address them, but there are people monitoring the chat. And so, and panelists, presenters, feel free to address any questions that pop up in the chat while we move into the panel discussion. So this part will take about 30 minutes. And the first question I have, I'm going to ask to Anne and Joyce. So we have a lot of Jets here, and I think as being interested in becoming a Japanese teacher, our Jets have a really unique experience, especially as us non-native speakers, as many of us here are. I tell my students, not pulling the wool over your eyes. I'm not a native Japanese speaker, but they bring a unique experience to becoming a Japanese teacher. So Anne and Joyce, you had great answers for how did your experience as a Jet influence your approach or your desire to become a Japanese teacher here in the States?
Oh, I'll jump in, I guess, because as I said, I resisted becoming a teacher. People told me since I was young, oh, you should be a teacher. And I thought, no, that's not sexy. I don't think that's going to make me a lot of money. What's up with that? So I avoided it. And then going to Japan through the JET program, I was there in 1989 to 90 in a place called Shiga. I forgot to tell you. Didn't know at the time that was the sister state of the state that I grew up in, Michigan. But in any case, just having the experience of seeing language teaching, and I was very lucky to be placed with a really talented JTE, Japanese teacher of English, who really had the students communicate, and it really was, I feel like that was my student teaching, actually. But I only stayed for a year because I was going to come home and, make the big bucks. And so after several different experiences, I worked at a Japanese company in Michigan, and I started teaching at the local community college and a university, and different places really, really needed teachers, just like now. And so I finally got certified and taught for 5 years at the high school level. So again, if it's your passion, I totally encourage you to follow your bliss.
It's hard to keep pull yourself away from it. I completely agree. And Joyce, would you share your story?
I'd love to. Thank you. I was thinking, I can't remember where I heard this or from who I heard it, but never teach language the way you were taught. And I don't think I really understood that until I went on the JET program. And really quickly, I realized, no, that's not going to work. So, collaborating with the JTEs, speaking with other JETs, like, what are you doing? What's working for you? Because I don't know what I'm doing, and this is a disaster. So just really, I think perhaps it didn't sound so sexy to be the Eikaiwa teacher, but really that was exactly what needed to happen because it was transformational for me. That is what makes my classes off the hook. It's the constant transitions, the constant games, the constant activities, the constant competition. And that is what really gets kids excited about learning a language. And so I think that was transformational for me. It is such a key part about how I run my classrooms. And I think that the numbers that I have, the enrollment numbers, are a real testament to how effective that is. And I attribute that entirely to the JET program.
Thank you so much. So Helen, I'm going to start with you for the next question. We are all non-native speakers of Japanese, and there's always, big debate, oh, if I'm a non-native speaker, would I be a good language teacher? And I think many of us agree that we non-native speakers bring something special to the classroom. And of course, native speakers bring another set of something special. So tell us about your thoughts on why JET alumni and non-native speakers are well suited for teaching Japanese.
Yes, I think that's a debate we have. I'm in a world language department with 5 different languages, and half of us are native speakers of our languages, and half of us are Americans who have learned our language. And I believe that we have a lot to offer. We shouldn't be embarrassed, oh my gosh, I'm not the native speaker. And maybe I make some mistakes in my languages, both in German and in Japanese. However, we have empathy with our students because we are coming from the same culture. So we can understand if something is going to be difficult because it was for us too when we were learning it. I currently teach with Yoshiko Sensei. She's wonderful. She is a native Japanese speaker, but sometimes she'll say, Helena, I'm really struggling. I thought I was going to teach this really easy grammar point and it was just going to take a few minutes, and the kids are still scratching their heads after 45 minutes and getting frustrated. What happened? And I can say, well, that's so different from what we do in English, or it's just not intuitive, or maybe try this way. So it's awesome when we can collaborate that way. Having been a foreigner in Japan and having experienced that, I was in Nagano-ken with my husband for 2 years after we got married, in Saitama-ken for 3 years first. And being able to share some of the pitfalls that I went through, I thought maybe I can save you some embarrassment later on because this happened. And it just makes for funny stories. They see that I'm human too, that, even though maybe they are not native Japanese speakers, that, oh, hey, the teacher's not either, and there's hope for me. So I think that there's a lot that we can offer.
Thank you. I'd also like Dr. Tabuse and Dr. Sawin to jump in here too, because you both have worked as teacher mentors. Tabuse Sensei, that's kind of I don't know, your crown here in Michigan is, and as a native speaker yourself, but bringing up non-native speakers like myself, because I did attend Eastern for some time, and I am a graduate of Middlebury. So if anyone has questions about what it's like to be at Middlebury. So if you would both please share your thoughts about non-native speakers becoming Japanese teachers.
Well, Can I go, Thor? All right. So I hear Japanese teachers from Japan sometimes have difficulties with classroom management in American schools because people are not used to classroom management in American schools. But JET alums or American teachers are familiar with the American system, both American and Japanese K through education situations. Particularly, this is true for the JET. And JET alumni can communicate with the school community and usually much better at promoting their programs. So JET alums are fully aware of the process of being Japanese language teachers. And if I were a native speaker, as a native speaker, I teach at a school, then I would really love to be paired with non-native speaker of Japanese to teach, like Helena Sensei says. I mean, it's wonderful to be paired up with non-native speakers who knows a lot about the American system and classroom management.
Yeah, and I would say, I think as a non-native speaker, we've all fallen in love with the language in some way. It wasn't just foisted upon us as a baby. So we have that love that we're able to share with other people. Like they can catch it from us. Our learners will never become a native Japanese speaker. That's an impossible dream. They'll never be a monolingual speaker. Like we embody what their future could be in some way of being a proficient user of this language, someone who's come into it and figured out how to make this language work and this culture work. And we've climbed in and explored every corner of this language. And we remember how we learned it. As a non-native teacher of German, like I know all of the tricks and all the things that are going to stump you out and the hacks and the ways around it that a lot of times native German speakers have never thought about because they don't really know how their language works in the way, they just use it. Right. So I think especially at the lower levels, which kind of most of our middle and high school classes are, it can be really a dynamic to be a non-native speaker, to be that kind of a role model, that kind of person sharing our passion with the students.
Thank you. And I'll chime in for everyone because something we mentioned during our planning time is like seeing people like us, our students feel represented and that you don't have to look like a Japanese person to be able to speak Japanese. Like you are welcomed into this world too. And so seeing us non-native speakers makes it a little bit more, I don't know, accessible or realizable, if I can make up an English word, that this is something that they can accomplish, right? All right, so I'm going to jump back to Joyce and Helena for my next question. Student demographics and motivations. And then I think, Anne, maybe we can get your perspective as an advanced level teacher, but what kind of motivations do you see and demographics among your students for learning Japanese?
Sure. So we are so lucky in our language. It's funny because I do German and Japanese, and I'm like, gosh, I wish there were more amazing anime in German. It's all in Japanese. The kids right now, Japanese is such a popular culture. And I think finally, Asian culture and languages are coming into their own. We've got our K-pop demon hunters, but just everything with Japanese, that the Japanese food is seen as so healthy and delicious, and people love to go out to sushi or ramen, or they're even like getting to know more than just that. Certainly all of the anime that they're glommed to. When I ask my students, what's your number one reason for wanting to take Japanese? They say, so I don't have to read the subtitles when I'm watching anime or reading manga, that they don't have to read it in English anymore. And also the representation, we have kids from lots of different Asian cultures, and they say, well, maybe I'm from Vietnam or I'm from somewhere else, but it's the one Asian language that you offer. So I'm going to go and try this out. And it usually works out well. I love my classes. It is my Hispanic kids and the white kids and the Black kids and everybody all together with their passion for Japanese K-pop, J-pop, anime, and just sometimes the kids who might are the odd duck out, the one who didn't really connect to other kids in the school, and they feel like they finally find their tribe in the Japanese classroom. It just gets to be this wonderful community of kids who support each other, have their back, and get each other. So I think we're sometimes a lifeline in the school.
And yeah, Joyce, can you add to that?
Absolutely. Everything that Shirai Sensei said, I absolutely agree with. I think also for me, teaching Spanish as well this year, seeing the difference in the enthusiasm of the kids. That Spanish is just sort of the default language, the kids that don't choose a language. And, you know, I always tell them, well, if you're not that interested in this one and you're asking me questions about my Japanese classes, maybe you should consider being in Japanese. And having kids, having been teaching Japanese for a few years now, seeing, not always, but some kids do become interested. Some kids do make the change, although it's harder in terms of graduation requirements. And for college, they have to take the same class. But definitely I have kids from Spanish class that will join origami club or the Japan club, just that interest. And I think I have a kid right now, I'm at a new school, and every day as I greet the students, he just stands there and looks at me and watches me. And I think it's really important for students to see themselves reflected in you, because I think that really makes it real. It's not just, you know, someone, this teacher teaching this like different language. It just makes it more real, and perhaps they'll sign up for the class.
Thank you. And so those were kind of like K-12 perspective, or mostly high school perspective. So Anne, you have most recently taught in a variety of college levels, but also taught at the K-12 level. So do you see any difference in motivation or demographics?
Yes, indeed. A lot of it is longitudinal. So I started, in the early 90s, basically. And I remember thinking then, most of my students, I'd ask them why they're taking Japanese. About a good 70% or so wanted to go into business. And then some were into martial arts and so on. But people, this is pre-internet, okay? We didn't have an internet at one point. So at those times, you couldn't get anime easily at all. Or manga you had to actually order from far away, etc. So I had 10% at that time who I called the ninja factor. They were the ones who knew about this thing called manga or something, and they were kind of really into it. And so now it has completely flipped. I might have 10% of my community college students who want to go into business or, work for a Japanese company. Maybe they're into karate or something. And then the other 90% are into manga and anime. But a recent two new developments, and again, Flint, part of the Rust Belt for sure, right? Not, and you've all heard about the water situation, all kinds of things. And then close to Ann Arbor is more affluent and so on. But everybody loves anime, right? And now another thing I'm seeing in both places is everyone loves Japanese food. So it's kind of like what Helena was talking about. So of course we know about sushi. Why don't we make homemade ramen? And so that's another piece that's come up. The other thing that's happened is previously, and I've been at the community college for at least 10 years now, if I piece them all together. And often I just assumed a lot of my students would not ever go to Japan, or they hadn't been because it's very expensive and so on and so forth. But in recent years with the weak yen, I have many students who have actually traveled to Japan either with family or on their own just for fun. And that makes them want to learn the language too. So I'm seeing kind of two new trends, which is Japanese food lovers, total foodies, and people who've traveled to Japan. I want to go back.
Cool. Thank you all. Yeah, and I think we're fortunate being in Michigan. We have a really strong Japanese language program here. There's a strong interest, and not just in the pop culture aspect, but we have a lot of businesses. Japan has invested a ton of money in Michigan businesses here, so we're really fortunate in that aspect. The last question I have, we have about, I don't know, like 8 minutes before we're going to jump into our breakout room session, excuse me, is to talk about salaries for K-12, college instructors, private school, etc. And I can speak a little bit. We have talked, Sawin Sensei introduced some information. So it isn't, uncommon to know that a public school versus a private school, public schools tend to pay better. I was employed at Detroit Public Schools for 4 years, and the pay scales in most of those places are all public, so you can find that kind of information if you're curious and see what the steps are. Step 1 would be like a first-year teacher. Step 2 is in your second year, et cetera. So to kind of translate that language for you. I've also worked at a charter school, although I've never really concerned myself with my paycheck. I've always like followed my heart. But I'm curious if anybody else would like to chime in. There's also, I teach currently at a community college part-time, which is not uncommon at community colleges. I think that's kind of their deal is they keep us at the part-time level, and I'm paid per credit hour. So that's if you're curious about those kind of things, you can come and talk to us in the breakout rooms. And the other, well, I'll go ahead. Would anyone like to chime in here for the, because it's a tough topic, but it is something that we definitely want to consider or know about as we consider this profession.
Right. Go ahead, Helena, because you're in the trenches.
Helena, please.
Okay. Well, I was just going to say there were a couple of things I'm 25 years into this career here in America. Like I said, I started in '94 over in Japan, and there were, I love what Thor said. It totally made sense. I absolutely echo that as well. And some tips of the trade, which I wish I had known earlier, or I had just not dragged my feet. So I absolutely echo getting the master's as fast as you can, even before you start teaching. And then also that usually you can bump yourself up in the salary schedule. I was sort of ignorant and just hoping somebody would maybe share with me. Nobody did. So usually your district has the salary schedule and they say how you can bump up, how fast you can earn credits. So beyond the master's or beyond the bachelor's, that you're like earning extra credits, and it can be through universities, it can be through other programs, but as fast as you can. They cost something. Boulder Valley would even help reimburse some of the cost of the extra education. So get that master's plus 12, master's plus 24, master's plus 36, master's plus 48. Everything. You don't have to have a PhD. You can. That's the highest on the salary schedule, but every amount of those credits. I thought, I'll just wait till one fine day. The faster you get them, the longer you have that higher salary that, for the longevity of your career, and not just waiting for
your retirement.
That's retirement. So that's really important to know. Really, really critical. So absolutely get that master's, get that higher education as fast as you can to bump up in the salary schedule. Also that there are sometimes extra duties, and also getting that second language or something else that you can do to be flexible. I know so many people who are Japanese and history, Japanese and something, that you have that second thing in your pocket, so that if you're weak, if the only thing part-time about a part-time teaching in the middle at the high school is your salary, you work just as hard. So do yourself a favor, find a way to be full-time, even if it's getting a second bachelor's in something, just so that you can be full-time in your position, and then you can love what you're doing in Japanese, but still put food on the table and pay that mortgage.
And I'll echo that because I'm triple certified, actually. English literature and art were my initial 2 certifications. And then I just randomly took a Japanese class and fell in love, and it completely changed my life. So come and talk to me about that if you're curious. But being able to teach art has enabled me to, that's how I started the program at Renaissance in Detroit, is I did part-time art and part-time Japanese, because you can't step into a new school and start a brand new program and have 5 Japanese classes. So, having that extra certification, and because public schools don't like to hire part-time people, they have a certain like full-time number of teachers that they need, and there's no flexibility. So if you can have a second certification, whether it's another language, art has been wonderful, music, computer, political science, whatever, highly recommend. It would really, help protect you in the future. Joyce and Ann, did you have anything to add to the salary discussion, or any final thoughts before we jump into?
Joyce
go ahead, Ann, and then Joyce.
Joyce wants to say. Mm-hmm.
Oh, sure. Yeah, actually, I want to tell people that you really need to be proactive. In California, we can't afford not care about our salaries. It's very expensive to live here. So you really have to be proactive. Do your homework. If you don't know what a salary schedule is, look it up. Become familiar with it. The language, it can be all of the little tiny print on there. If you don't understand it, reach out to HR, reach out to the union, find out if they will count your JET experience. Some of that little fine print excludes that because you have to have had a valid credential at an accredited institution, right? So they make it very difficult. Find out which districts don't have that, which districts are open to considering your JET experience because you are teaching abroad. You're teaching, it's teaching experience, valid teaching experience. And also do PR, write emails, find out who are the principals, and the assistant principals, CC all of them. You will get a call back. I had a principal tell me that there is not one principal who would not love to boast about having a Japanese program. And so everything that everyone else said, yes, starting a program, a new program, you can't do it all at one time. So having that additional ability, whether it's another language or another subject, like Kate said, and then once you have your foot in the door, keep going. Whatever it is that interests you, add on a certification. It just makes you more marketable. Whenever you want to switch, wherever you want to switch, you're going to get an interview.
And all I would add to that is both community colleges and public universities are just like K-12 public schools. The salaries are public information. So go find it. You will find vast differences and so on and so forth, but you can look it all up. So don't just, assume, oh, teachers don't make a lot, which is what I assumed as a young person. But we have rules, we have laws in in Michigan that say schools have to publish certain things, and they even have to publish lists of staff members who make $100,000 or more. I would not have thought that was a thing when I was young. So.
All right. Thank you all so much. I think, Jessica, we are about ready then to jump into our breakout sessions, unless any of our panelists or presenters had any final thoughts before we move on to the breakout sessions.
All right. So we are going to move into the breakout session.